I know, isn't that horrible? I mean, I'm not even a horse person.
I know, but it's just so sad.
Did you give this to Mara?
The whole thing? Or
Yeah.
just...
She can hand them out. Look at this. Okay, it looks like. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the Thursday, March 14th, 2019, regular meeting of the Public Arts Commission of the City of Palm Springs. And I'd like to ask Mr. Verada to please call the roll.
Very good. Commissioner Gladstone?
Present.
Commissioner Merrigan? Commissioner Murray?
Here.
Commissioner Pritchard?
Present.
Vice Chair Yanni?
Present.
Chair Sheffer?
Present.
And Commissioner Brenner is
Excused.
excused.
She has the flu and she's nice enough not to come. May I please have a motion for acceptance of the agenda?
I move to accept the agenda.
Second.
Very good. Any objections? Good. Because we have a really good meeting, a chance to really discuss things. So, but first, if there are any public comments, this time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Public Arts Commission on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Public Arts Commission, and agenda items if the member of the public cannot be present later in the meeting at the time the item is heard by the Commission. Additionally, members of the public may address the Commission on each item listed on the posted agenda at the time each item is heard. Although the Public Arts Commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 5 minutes is assigned for each speaker. Are there any members of the public? Very good, then. I don't think we have a set of minutes yet, right? So we'll do it at the next meeting. Okay. I have a couple of things just to sort of announcements to bring people up to date. The first is that the Rotary Chalk Fest, whatever they call it, is this Saturday, and it's going to be on Museum Way, and they've arranged to have it closed. And they would like a couple of volunteers from the commission if you would like to be judges. The judging's at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we've been working with them as far as getting the road closed and trying to be sort of sponsors in a way. So if anyone would like to do that, just let me know after the meeting. The second thing is that the downtown merchants, downtown, they call themselves Main Street, are having a pop-up on April 16th, where each of the locally owned businesses is going to be having some kind of performance, or Destination PSP wants to have a chalk artist do something in front of their store. There's wine tastings, there's all kinds of things. And we've discussed having a party in the pit on the 18th of April. And when we get to talking about that, I'd like to suggest that maybe we do it the night where they're promoting people to come downtown. And something sort of participatory that people could do, like paint something or whatever. Okay.
Like paint in
the
the pits?
third thing, right? Not a paintball fight, just a painting. The third thing is that the city's been debating for about, I don't know, a year what kind of benches to buy for downtown to replace the current benches. And the downtown merchants have, mostly on Facebook, but as a group, asked if there couldn't be some benches that were painted by artists, which a lot of cities do. And so we got the city to agree that we could work with the downtown merchants to paint about a dozen benches along Palm Canyon, North Palm Canyon. So again, if anyone would like to sort of meet with them about how to put out a call for artists, what kinds of things we're looking for. The city's very concerned that it be paint that not wear off because they get a lot of wear and tear. But I'm pleased that they thought to ask us to help them do that. So,
Madam Chair, is that just limited to paint? For example, if there are those who would like to do a quilt or flowers or,
well, they are a bench
yes.
outside, right? So
I'm just, you
as
know.
long as it's durable, I mean, it could be wrapped in something,
Right.
not like the Eric Mack piece, but something that isn't going to go away. Okay, and the last thing is.
I think you have another question over here, Madam Chair.
Do you have a question? Yeah. Did you want to? No. Okay. The last thing is that the Palm Springs Resorts and some other groups are working with the city on the notion of closing Museum Way from Bellardo to the museum permanently, so that it could be sort of an art promenade, or just so many events now are taking place there. For example, this Chalk Fest they have to clean all the chalk off at the end of the day, which is what happened to us on our thing. So I'm going to put that on the next agenda so that we could discuss how we feel about having that closed, because I think we should make some kind of a recommendation to the city council if we think it's a good idea. Okay, does anyone have any questions about any of those things? And don't hesitate to volunteer.
Well, just, Madam Chair, as we think about the closure of Museum Way, is there more thought about the Maryland positioning? Should we factor that into our?
I think we
as
should.
think
I
about
think that the PS Resorts, that's sort of part of the plan. But I'll see if I can get either someone to come to the meeting or draw us a
Right.
map of what they'd like.
Yeah, because we should be thinking of the two parts of it, yes, Maryland there, and the closure of the road.
Right.
Sorry, where are you, is there a discussion about moving Maryland from its previous location?
Well, it's currently slated to go in the park, in the
Right.
corner. But first of all, the park, I did find out, is in final drawing stage, so it is moving forward. But PS Resorts has, the Maryland statue is paid for. It could come any time, and the park may take a couple of years to finish. And they would like it to be on Museum Way, but as close to Palm Canyon, as far from the museum and as close to Palm Canyon as
So in the middle of the street,
if the street were closed.
so in front of the museum.
But
So blocking the view
No,
of
it
the
wouldn't
San
block-
Juan sculpture in
think
front of the
about-
museum.
no, because think about how long her legs are. I've actually talked to some people at the museum. The notion would be to draw people off of Palm Canyon to see that there is a museum at the end of the street.
Sorry, I missed this conversation. I'll just verbalize since I don't think anyone can document my face, but I am displeased with this development.
Well, this is why
So
we'll
this
put
has
it
nothing
on-
to do
right.
with the Arts Commission. This is just something that PS Resorts has
This
been
very
pushing
much
for.
has to do with
Right.
the Arts Commission.
In any case, it doesn't do us a lot of good to discuss it today because it's not on the agenda, but we will put it on for next time. And next time, by the way, you may have noticed on the back of the agenda will be a special meeting because the mural application from the Boys and Girls Club has been just about processed, but they haven't sent out the notices. And so I thought it might be good to meet over there when we could actually look at the wall that they're going to paint. And so we'll have a special meeting on March 28th at 4 p.m. No, that's great.
Can I just, sorry,
Okay.
can I just say one thing about the Maryland, since I was really concerned about that at the last meeting, that something like that has to be a very thoughtful process with lots of community input and disclosure, and to think of how that sculpture would completely dominate that space in front of the museum, no matter how far away it is.
Again, it's not, there will be community input, I'm sure, and there will be hearings by the council. We were just asked to discuss it on a meeting where it's on the agenda, and then everyone's feelings about it can be taken into account. But because Maryland aside, the notion of closing the street so that people could walk down and see the art or the park or whatever is there is somewhat separate from Maryland. So we could comment on whether we think having a promenade would be nice, and not have an opinion on Maryland or have a whatever opinion. So I will put it on the agenda, and we'll try to get something to react to instead of just guessing where they want to put it. So, okay? Okay? Okay. Okay, so the 3 items on the agenda are the 3 big projects we have for the rest of the year. So let's start with the 30th anniversary art show. And Commissioners Merrigan and Yanni want to bring everyone up to date on.
Commissioners, would you like me to pass out the handout? Is that,
Yes.
okay, I'll pass it down this way, take one of each, then I'll start the second page on the other side.
Okay. Do you want to pass yours
I
out?
don't understand.
It's take one, the other one's coming from the other
So
direction.
it's just one page that we're taking and the back.
This one? There's different pages.
Do you want to pass yours
So,
out?
yeah, so we have 2 things going, neither of which is official yet.
Give one to, that's what, and
So, Tracy, I'll start, if that's okay, and then you can follow. So, we've had a couple meetings with the Desert Art Center. The show hasn't changed too much from what we've discussed, although it's been a little bit refined. We're talking about celebrating our 30th anniversary with a show called 30 by 30. So that would end up applying sort of 30 artists. 30 by 30 could also be the size limit, and celebrating our 30th anniversary, right? So we've pushed the exhibition back to May, which actually works better with Desert Art Center, and now also it's sort of like the ending event of our 30th anniversary year. So potential, we've pretty much nailed down the dates. It would open around Friday, May 4th to the public. We talked about having kind of like a more, instead of doing the openings that we've done in the past where we share an opening with Desert Art Center on a Friday night, we were toying around with the idea of doing something on a Sunday and in the afternoon. Part of which because the exhibition will include the wonderful pieces that Tracy and Sarah worked on with the students from Palm Springs Unified in January. And we'd like to get those students and their families to come. And of course, we have a better shot of getting them on a weekend than on a Friday night. And also to just sort of open it up and make it more kind of, sort of like a family day, interactive day, as opposed to like a traditional opening at night. So we've been talking about doing that on Sunday the 5th. We haven't nailed it down yet. The main thing is we will use a system called online juried shows to have submissions submitted instead of the traditional, how we've done it in the past. Al, you've been there, right? Yeah, where the artists just come in with the works on a certain day, right? So we're actually going to have people submit things in advance. We're going to publicize it through Instagram. So we'll have sort of like a brief version of the call for entries on Instagram, and then direct people from that page to this site where they can register. They can submit copies of their work. They can include an artist statement, And then there will be certain people who are designated as administrators. Obviously, you know, we would be some. We haven't talked about having a drawer, but like an official drawer. But essentially, that would be the way that they would come in. So then the idea is that we would have sort of an easier intake because we would already have the pieces picked in advance, and we would just only tell the people whose pieces were picked to come to the Desert Art Center on the intake day. So the intake day would be that Monday before. I think it's like April 30th. But it shouldn't take too long. Anyway, so I'm planning to be there. If anyone else is up for it, it shouldn't take too long because it's only 30 pieces as opposed to like 100 like we've had in the past.
And Desert Art Center will help us.
And they'll help, yeah. And Desert Art Center has volunteered to hang it. They will also set up a sales mechanism, so if artists want to sell their pieces, they can be sold through the Desert Art Center. Because as you probably know, in the past, there's been some confusion as to, you know, how the purchase works and things. So we figured, we just requested that they handle that, which they were happy to do. And so the theme, of course, is public art. So you'll see, so these are kind of two versions of what we've been working on. And the idea was to sort of think about public art, right? And invite the public to consider it visually and artistically. So there's some prompt questions on the first one, right? How do we interact? What would you like, where would you like to see public art? What does it look like? What should it look like? What should it be made of? Share your vision as we reimagine, redefine, rethink public art. We welcome your ideas. And then we, of course, you know, post ideas. So I think there could be sort of like two tracks, and then Tracy, I'll let you, you know, talk more about your vision of it. But we were thinking about this kind of generating a conversation on Instagram just about public art. And then if people are motivated to make a piece, then encourage them to do the piece, right? So it would have this kind of two tracks where we're like discussing public art in Palm Springs and 30th anniversary and things like that. And then at the same time using that as a mechanism to generate interest in our art exhibition.
And also, Madeleine is working on a website that isn't the city site. It will just be PS Public Arts. And so, for example, a much longer description of the theme of the show or whatever can be on this website. And anything else, any other information. And the idea, I think, is to cast a very wide net and make sure that we reach as many people as we can, rather than the printed prospectus we've had in the past. And we never really knew where it got mailed to.
Mm-hmm.
But if we use social media and other people's lists and whatever, we should be able to reach people who maybe in the past hadn't known about this show. And
But I think also we like the idea of having people who are not making pieces of art get a chance to weigh in through Instagram, you know, in addition to artists who do want to submit a piece, right? So it's sort of, it's like really trying to put the public in public art, or, you know, get the public involved in public art. Even if they're not submitting a piece of work, they might still have something to say, right, via Instagram or something.
so, Tracy, why don't you continue, and then we'll discuss the whole idea.
So,
You have to talk into the mic, though.
I just don't want to repeat. So to put it very succinctly, we are going to have an RFP that goes out. Not everybody is on social media. Desert Art Center is going to send it to all of their artists. We will have some printed that will be available. They are going to be submitted online to artist calls. So the idea behind it was 30 by 30, public art is public. And let me just read what I had originally given you guys. This year's show focuses on Artists Here, celebrating 30 years of public art in Palm Springs. You are invited to express yourself in any medium and size up to 30 by 30 inches. For direction, consider public art is for the public, accessibility, how do you want to interact with public art, how do you want others to interact with public art, placement, where, why, and when, Where do you want to place public art in Palm Springs? Longevity, how long should the piece last? Medium, traditional, or barrier breaking? How to activate a piece of public art or activate the space it inhabits? Reimagine, redefine, or reinterpret public art. So that was what I originally proposed. Originally, we proposed doing, have artists submit on Instagram and be able to do it a more old-fashioned way. But to make everything easier, we're going to advertise it on Instagram and other social media, and people can share their ideas ahead of time with the hashtags that we'll have, and they can kind of submit electronically, but then everybody will go through the art show, online art show program. Desert Art Center has just started using it, and they've had great success for it. So it's an easier way to have the work submitted. And they were able to do their entire show through it. So when we first met with them, they were in the middle of it. And the last time we met with them, they had gone through the whole process and were really happy with it. So Sarah is going to be the one managing that process. We're going to use, we're going to be an admin on their account, and it will be our show that is submitted through there. The one thing it allows also is that people can purchase art from the site also. So when the show is up, the art will also be available online and then available for the period of time that we have the show up. So one thing, I hadn't really worked with the show in the past, but I thought it would be great to have people be able to purchase the art easily. So Desert Art Center is going to do that. We're just going to provide them with a sign-in sheet that the artists will drop off with their work, and they'll keep that book to be able to refer to it, and they'll do all of the sales. And then we have a guest curator in mind. We can't share it right now, but we'll get back to you guys on that. And then we want the opening to be a really fun event for the community. So more of an art party and celebrating public art. So I think that's it.
Okay. Why don't
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add, so we just because we had a long discussion about this with Desert Center. We're building on our 30th anniversary. So again, trying to drive everything with that idea. So we are going to bring the felt map, right? And that will be on one wall. We will have the student pieces that were done at Palm Springs Unified also as well, which are very nice with student statements and things like that. And then we had a lot of discussion over can it really be 30 pieces? Is that too few? Because as you know, in the past, they've been kind of, up the rafters, right? So we were actually kind of excited about the idea of having fewer pieces and really having a chance to spotlight, sort of give them more air and more space to breathe and kind of really focus on those pieces as opposed to going the route that we've gone in the past, which has been, high numbers of pieces kind of scattered, placed all over the place, right? So that was one of the, we've agreed, I think, the Art Center, and we also felt that would be a good number, right? It wouldn't look empty, but also it would be a nice opportunity to, light, view, and also leave room for artist statements and things like that, which is part of what we wanted to do, which was to sort of keep that conversation about public art going within the exhibition itself. So this way we'll have room for all that on the walls in addition to the pieces. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, and I think we should go around and have some comments, but I'd like to suggest we start with Commissioner Gladstone since she is a curator. And just in terms of either the theme or, I mean, the mechanics are not something we need to work out here, but
So I'm just, I don't need an immediate answer, but just curious how much these things are gonna cost. I'm wondering if anyone's used the online portal, this website. I don't know if there's any issues with the city using this website, but I guess we're doing it
Well,
through, in
we'll do
partnership
it-
with Desert Art
right.
Center, so that's okay. And I guess I would say that, I think this is a good way to try out what we've been doing, but using other digital resources to support where, you know, it's really strained us to do that. But I guess I would ask if it's possible to try to really think about all the projects we're doing in terms of like collecting data kind of quantitatively. So if it's possible to do like a demographic survey of people who submit, I think that would just be very useful for us to see what audiences we're addressing when we do these types of community juried art shows. It seems like if we have online submissions, it should be fine to like, even if it's not attached to the to that particular application, but there should be a way to request that information if people want to provide it.
apparently
I think
it's
that's
very
great.
flexible and people can submit an image of what it is, but you can also actually jury things online. There can be several jurors, for example, looking at the submissions and voting, let's say.
Yeah, I'm asking even just before that point, when people submit, I'm very curious who is participating and who is submitting.
Well, I
And
think.
what audience and where they're from and, you know,
Well,
who.
I think
You mean
that's
the current-
a great idea.
Yeah, we need to really get the word out much more broadly than it has been in the past. And yes, I think we'll be able to track where the submissions
We might be able to
are coming
build
from.
that into the submission form.
Yeah,
Could be
that's
one
all
of
I'm
those things,
recommending.
like, you know, when you
And
see like
it's-
applications and it's like an optional thing, like that you can fill out
Yeah, we can
your
probably
like
build it into
demographic
the
information,
submission
you know,
form.
so we could like include that maybe in the thing as an optional, you know, and hopefully people will
Make it
just,
not optional.
huh?
Well,
I don't know if you
it
can
depends.
do that,
If you wanna
can
know
you?
where the, right.
I don't think
mean,
you
if
can,
wanna
right.
know where they live or something, that's fine.
yeah, it has to be
If you get
optional.
into like age, I think there's.
I would say try to collect as much data as possible because actually addresses are useful or zip
Or zip
codes
codes,
and
yeah.
age ranges, things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. How do you gender identify? Even this just basic things are very helpful. So if
No, I think that's a great idea. It's $150 to set up a show, and the admission is $7 per piece. So we talked about making it as inexpensive as possible, so free to students and $20 for adults.
I'd like us to consider having it free. I don't think that, even though, I mean, we're doing it in partnership with the Desert Art Center because they're much more set up to do this. But I think if we're having a public show, that it should be no charge to the artists, number one. And then by the same token, I don't think that we should give any cash prizes as we have in the past, because I don't think that's what our budget is for. But I think we can find a way to pay Desert Art Center for any costs that they incur.
So it's when I did the research on it, it was $7 an entry, and then that's what they charge you or us. The
company,
online jury
jury
shows.
Right, so if we got 100 entries, that would be $700. And I think we can
Yeah, however,
have Desert
however you
Art
want to handle
Center,
it.
we can pay them in some way to have done that, rather than have the city try to issue a purchase order to, you know, for X number of artists at $7. I think that would be harder to.
Well, we'll have to get a PO ahead of time in order to pay for it on a timely basis.
What we need to do is have a contract with the Desert Art Center for what they're gonna do. And then they do it all, and we pay them for the services of
Yeah, I'm just
managing.
thinking that they seem to be on a shoestring, so
we
If
won't
we,
make
if,
them pay
yeah,
for it.
if we can, yeah, but like, if their credit card bill is like $2,000 at the end of the month, they might need the money, so.
Let me work on that part. But do you agree that we should not charge the artists?
I
We've
don't know.
charged them
have-
Do you
$40 in the
think that there's
past.
some, is it
I,
as
I,
in
I
there's no
find in
value
the
to-
digital realm, asking people to pay a nominal fee, even if it's $1, even if it's $1 or $2, or offsetting the cost is just, I don't know. I mean, do you want, I mean, I guess, sure, it'd be great to have like 1,000 entries. That would be really amazing.
That's what I'm concerned
But
about.
I mean, it's,
I mean, is there any possibility of that?
Yeah.
I
maybe?
think there's two things. I think one, there is this element, right, that people have to be serious, right? So even if
Well,
it's a
I don't-
small fee, you want them to actually submit a piece that they can
I mean, in the sense that
finish.
there's like a buy-in, it's kind of like when you have to make an RSVP for like a relatively like a free show. It just sort of like commits you to the program or the project or. I don't know. I feel,
I
on the
also
one
think-
hand, I think
They-
free is really, really important, but on the other hand,
If we set it up so
is there a
that
cap?
they,
Right.
Cap it.
Right.
the money goes to the Desert Arts Center for their expenses in managing this, we can do it, but we can't have people paying $7 to the city. I mean, it just doesn't make any
Well,
sense,
no,
and I don't
it
think
would be
that,
paid, $7 is, online juried shows charges $7 per entry.
Right.
It's not
Right.
the, so when you submit your piece on there, you'd have to put in a credit card, and either it would be 0 or it would be $10 or however much it is. And then for every entry, online jury shows would bill
the client.
Desert
right.
Arts Center $7 a piece, so.
see, we can repay Desert Arts Center for managing this whole thing and any costs that they have. I don't think that the city of Palm Springs should be charging people to participate in a public art program.
No.
So, I mean, it's different than a juried art show that we had before, which was, sort of a hybrid.
It's actually not. It's exactly the same, and
Yeah.
we shouldn't have been charging people $40 before either.
Right.
I mean, it just sort of self-selects who's going to.
So,
that.
I mean, I'd feel more comfortable not charging the people who submit and,
It's fine
Maybe
with
we
me,
should
however you
just simply
guys
do a
want.
cap on the number of entries in that there's only a certain volume that anyone can really deal with anyway.
we could do that. Do you
Or
wanna-
like
we could
each,
put a
even-
time frame in it. and-
or however many each person can submit. It
Yeah,
said
like
4 JPEGs online.
Well, we
Oh, I
can,
didn't even think about that.
we
It's
can
great to have
also
It
artists
should
say
just be
submit
one
one
from one
to
person.
one
I
to
didn't think about
one piece per submission.
Yeah, I would think that with this, there'd be one artist submission. I totally agree that it should be free because it's public art. That's what we push for and strive for, is free public art. And two other comments with the theme being 30 by 30, although I realize it would probably be rather restrictive. I would like to see each piece be 30 by 30. And an absolute must, the piece must be for sale.
You
Why?
think, why?
What,
Because when you go to an art show, it's public art, to see a piece and you can't obtain it.
Well, you can't buy.
They can in
No,
a
no.
museum, right?
It's a different thing. We're doing a gallery show. And I'm just opposed to pieces in a gallery show that are not for sale.
This is not a gallery show. I mean, ostensibly, we could have student classes submitting projects for public art ideas, and that wouldn't necessarily be for sale. I mean, I don't see how selling artwork has anything to do with this project.
Plus, past experiences, I mean, it was harder to buy something because you had to call the artist. But if we sold a half a dozen pieces in a
No,
show,
like
that
one.
was a lot.
One,
One.
yeah.
But also we did have some people who didn't want to sell their piece,
Yeah.
that they just they wanted it for their own collection, which was fine, so. I mean, I think I understand what you're saying, right, that you want the public who's looking to also have an opportunity, but I don't necessarily think it should be required.
But I think we'll also.
It's up to the person.
We'll also document it. I mean, there'll be online an image of each of the 30 pieces in the show.
We can encourage people to have them for sale. They should be 30 by 30 though. Because they can be a there's enough,
Sorry, I feel like putting restrictions on sizes of art is like just really crazy, but I guess that's just, but if you want to model it that way and just say you have to work on this certain size canvas, that's great. I just think when you're asking someone to make something and there are already these questions and limitations going into it, and then, sure, work on a 30 by 30 panel and makes it easier to hang, but what are we really trying to get art out of this? Is that the goal?
No, I think we're trying to get.
Or you're trying to get ideas. We're trying to
Ideas.
capture ideas in a
Right.
community kind of engagement.
Right.
So I just don't see why you have to, I guess you could use my argument in both directions.
Well,
So
we
I'll
have
just
to
leave
have
it to
some
you.
limit.
Whatever you want to do.
What if you said?
We have to have
this
some
is-
size limit. Because there's
Sure,
not, we don't have
maximum
unlimited
size, but-
space, right? But I mean, so,
there's always been like way too much stuff there, and it looks way too junky. Like it's really hard to see anything. So we were trying to give people an idea of how to function in a certain space and have enough pedestals for things or
right.
enough of those wall panels without having to hang things on windows and things like
What
that.
if
like
it is
they do.
three-dimensional? Do you have a?
They have
Yeah, there's
bases,
a lot of, there's
pedestals.
enough
No,
pedestals.
I meant, what are the dimensions of a three-dimensional piece?
So 30 by 30 by 30.
by 30.
That's pretty big for a
That's a
pedestal.
lot bigger.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not wedded to, I mean, it was, because we were saying 30 by 30 started as 30th anniversary, 30 artists, 30 pieces. So then we just sort of kept going with the 30 inches by 30 inches,
Well, I
because
kept
we've
going
always.
with
Why don't we,
Huh?
I kept going.
let's
with
put
it.
it as.
Right, but I'm saying, I'm
as,
not wedded
you
to
know,
that. I
the
mean, we can still, it can still be 30 by 30, but without the size thing, right? I mean,
Right, but I mean, it could say, that that's sort of part of the challenge is to do it 30 by 30.
Yeah.
But if someone wants to submit something else, it might be accepted and it might not. I mean, it just depends on
I
more
just
than
don't
the
even know if
size.
that's like I don't think that's like a standard size canvas.
No, it's not,
I mean,
right.
is it?
I imagine it as
I
the
guess-
max
I
size,
think- I think-
but
I
it-
Well,
think
do you want to
putting
just have
parameters
it
on it
stand
is
for
fine.
30 artists, 30
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds great.
30 artists, 30 pieces, right?
And
No
we'll call it
size
30 by
limit.
30, and if somebody picks up on that idea, they get extra points, right? I have no idea. I mean, we could have 30 entries, or we could have 130. I doubt we would have more than that, because in the past, we barely got, hardly any were ever rejected in the past. It just, and especially because they got dropped off, and then to make people come back and get them if they're not in the show is harder than just not accepting them to begin with. Commissioner Murray, do you have any thoughts on
Yes.
casting a wide net here and getting?
I think it's good, and it's somewhat analytical, and that's understandable. We're at the beginning stage, if you will. But what I'm listening for is the relational. For example, one of the things that we've established with our show is that we've built relationships with the community, with the artist, and I hope we don't lose that aspect of it. Some of that is emotional marketing, where we continue to build our audience and they come out to our events and we connect with them. So I just hope we don't lose that relational part of it. And then I have a question, real quick. How much are we paying Sarah?
She gets paid by the hour.
Okay.
It's $35 an hour, and
not to
she has-
exceed
right.
80 hours or something?
Okay.
well,
all right,
it's like
all right.
60 hours for this project.
Yeah.
And it's sort of evenly spaced by the month, but it's not going to be because
Right, okay.
it's going to be much busier in May.
Right.
So,
So
but
that's
in
all.
the end, that is it's by the hour,
So that's always been a big event for us, and relationships, and
and
we don't want to lose that.
Do you have thoughts on how is there maybe in the questions that we pose to artists that we might address that, or?
I'm not sure how we would go about that.
Because we
I
talk
see
about
the-
where would you like to, so maybe that's part of it, like reaching out to different parts of the city, I'm thinking,
Well,
but I
I'm-
mean, we don't have to talk about it now, but I'm just saying, maybe if you can think about a way to,
Well, I noticed we're having refreshments.
To push
and a
that.
reception.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm talking about.
okay,
And maybe we can have some hands-on kind of thing going on
Right.
too.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
But relationships are important, I
Okay,
think.
anything else on this? Otherwise, I think we need to go back to the Desert Arts Center now and make sure that they can set this up and get it going so that it, and you have plans for printing the same prospectus, whatever is gonna be online.
And real quick, Madam Chair, are we extending our reach? I mean, could someone in Germany submit?
Ah,
I
You
know,
know,
that's a
I mean,
good question.
because of the online.
They can if they show up to bring their piece.
Oh, so they have to show.
That's
up.
true, we
Okay.
need to put something in there that it has to come in person maybe, right? That it,
Well,
because we're
that-
not gonna send it back.
it has to be delivered on a particular date.
Right.
So there are just a number of models on this online juryshows.com. I imagine you've looked at it with many, 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 many details. So I expect that you, whoever is organizing this, will
Well, and
look at all that.
if you could help with the setup for that, since you've done this, just what are the, which of these details should be in it? Give you just a checklist and see, just basically what you're doing now, but just,
And there are artists who
Write it down.
submit and don't come to the event, the final.
but we would like
Yes.
the artists there and the students from the Arts Institute who did this project beforehand. And the map. Okay, anything else on this? All right. So the next big project is with, did we hand out your, Mara, do you have the Dyson and Womack? I think, okay. And I'm hoping that as soon as we get through with this, that we can have a little site visit to the Tockwitz Median, because we've been asked to tell them, the city council more specifically, where we would put the pieces, so we'll,
Can I just say one thing, because I probably won't be here for that site visit, is to really make sure that the sculptures fit
right.
on and don't protrude out into
And
traffic.
that's one of the things that
So
the city
it's a
council.
very narrow space,
brought up.
and if there's enough space for them.
Right, and it may not work, but that's why I think we should perhaps adjourn and just go outside and stand there. All right, okay. So I think most of you met with Emily Womack, and she's written a little update that Mara's gonna walk us through.
So we had some meetings last week with Dyson and Womack, and they'd like to talk to you, Russell, and just do an interview with you so that they can incorporate your input into their scope one. I think we had really fruitful conversations, and so it was really great. They reviewed all of our statements and our goals, and then they used that for a questionnaire for the workshop. We did this sort of group conversations, which were really good. And then they will be out here next week to do field research and to look at a lot of the sites, to reach out to community members who we identified who might be good people to have continued conversations with, who are outside of the Public Art Commission proper. And then they will be doing some benchmarking and complete a schedule as part of the end of scope one. So I expect that will be in the next month.
And the goal is to have a report or some recommendations by June. And be able to go over them and see if we like them, and then pass, if there are things that require changing the ordinance a little bit, we could go. But if you want to
And I
look
should
at the
just,
last page.
yeah, if I can explain the last page a little bit. So even though this is just 7 of us who responded, they said it was important to point out where, on average, since there was a real range of responses, and since all of us think about scales of 1 to 10 in different ways, it's better to look at where, on average, certain questions were lower or higher. And so those questions, I believe, were 5, 7, 8, and 9. Those were all of the questions so those questions are that public art opportunities in Palm Springs are accessible to artists. All of us, on average, rated that kind of low.
And so that was from disagree to strongly agree, right? That was the scale.
Exactly, except that on average, those were the
Right.
lowest ranking.
I'm just
So-
saying that was how the question was formulated.
And so number 7 is public art in Palm Springs provides opportunities to a diverse range of artists. Again, we all cumulatively ranked that lower, something that we are concerned with that we do not think is true. Residential community members know where public art is in Palm Springs. We all, on average, rated that low. And number 9, public art is accessible to many diverse communities that comprise Palm Springs. That was also ranked relatively low. And so, on average, so those, I think, are the things that I think Dice and Womack are using as sort of signals for how to, these are our biggest priorities. This is where we may be failing the most, or where we need to do the most work, depending on cup half full or cup half empty approach to that question. But yeah, I think we'll do the most work there. So.
Okay, does anyone else have just a comment from having been in on the discussions?
I just found it was really helpful. I really enjoyed having an open discussion with them in a smaller group setting and being able to hear their thoughts on feedback on the kinds of things that we're hoping to accomplish as a commission. And I like that format. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to work in those kind of like small group settings like that, which obviously are easier to schedule and sort
And
of.
we might mix them up the next time.
Yeah, maybe,
That might
yeah.
be
But I thought it was great, so thank you so much for setting that up.
Very good. Okay. So, our guests might as well come up because Commissioner Pritchard is going to walk us through this idea for a project on the Virgin Hotel site, which, if we need to approve a budget for it or some other things, we will put on the next agenda. So we just can discuss it today, but we can't finalize it.
Yeah, 'cause it's the Virgin site, which we've been talking about for about the last year, is now on the verge of being ready for us. It's going to be cleaned up and accessible very soon. So as we've talked about the goal of making this a public graffiti art park, I have Pete Salacito and Aaron Hansen here who can answer any questions based on the package of information that's in front of you. So it might be a little bit unclear as to what specifically you're looking at. But on the site, there are existing 2 sort of faux concrete wall structures. So what we will be able to do is to build out these to make larger walls that will accommodate up to 6 artists. There will be 4 that will be approximately 10 feet high by 30 wide, and then 2 that are slightly smaller. The 4 large ones will be 2 north-facing and 2 south-facing, because they are T-walls, and then the 2 small ones will be west-facing. So the goal is to have all of these artists, and Pete being very well connected in the Coachella Valley artist scene, have him sort of coordinate the selection and submission of perhaps up to 10 or 12 artists perhaps, and then we will fine tune it to the 6 artists that we would have work within the limitations of our budget and the size of the walls that are available to us. Aaron is very capable of doing this wall construction, but in a conversation that Chair Sheffer has had with Michael Braun at Grid Development, he might even be persuaded to accommodate us in that aspect in the building of the walls. So the budget, once we determine that, the budget, which is now approximately 24.9, could drop by about 4,000 if we get him to make the wall construction, and then we would just have the prep cost in the budget.
Also, you do need to show him the, like, I'm not sure he's aware of the height that you're thinking of. And will it be open towards Museum Way and?
Well, yeah,
Lardo? I
yeah,
mean,
we
so that-
submitted, and I connected Aaron with Octavio, who is the chief engineer at Grid Development.
Why don't you?
Yeah, Aaron and
Move up to the-
Pete come up and introduce yourselves. so
Ryan
we-
can come
with-
too.
Hey, pull over another chair to,
And the mic.
Ryan, you can come
Oh.
too.
and Ryan will be part two.
Now, we're gonna, just because we're being recorded
mic.
and someone tries to write the minutes
No,
by
the mic.
listening to the tape,
The mic.
could you each introduce yourselves again and spell your names? Because there's this poor woman who tries to listen to our tape and write the minutes. So we'd
Also,
like to help her out.
please hit the button in front so it's green.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Aaron Hansen, Aaron Hansen.
Pete Salcido, Petesalcido.
Ryan Campbell, RyanCampbell.
I think we should also mention for the minutes that Ryan Campbell just completed a mural in the pit, which has been, I think, very well noticed, and especially the hashtag that goes with it. And it will be
When
someone
did-
involved in this
When
project.
did
but
that
then again-
hashtag happen?
The
Who
hashtag
discussed
happened-
that?
Well,
I don't remember discussing that here.
no,
Did we?
it was going to, it was going to be
Sorry to bring that up, but I
smaller.
have to, yeah.
And
Okay.
so I think we've talked about making it smaller. It
Okay.
was just, it was done, everything was late because of the city and then also the rain.
Weather.
I understand. I would
So-
just, I'm very concerned about seeing something that we never discussed, ever, or received any kind of subcommittee email or anything about it. I was just shocked that it
Well-
is there, and I hope that that won't happen again.
It was
Sorry.
discussed to have on the wall perpendicular to the mural, it was going to say something like "Art is here," which was the theme that we were carrying through, and that was discussed, and a small hashtag. And you know, in this attempt to get it done, I think signals got crossed, but other people have noticed it as well, and
I
so
think
we
it
need
does
to-
a disservice to the artist and to the hard work and the planning, because it just overwhelms the artwork. And this is why I think we really need to have holistic discussions about what is happening in this downtown park. Sorry to bring you into this conversation, but I kind of feel useless if we're unable to address these questions before in the planning stages. So that's why I'm grateful that you're here and we have all these pictures.
Right.
And
Well,
that-
just in
exactly.
defense of everyone here, it was because of the slowness of the city doing contract and payment and the weather issue, it was sort of an on-site discussion that went from the artists here to the hashtag, and the artists who are here were part of that discussion, and it was their decision what
But
creative
but
license.
it just wasn't, we're going against our own mural ordinance laws and rules that we set up, so I
No, and
understand.
the
I
original
just-
plan
it's-
did not include that wall.
I just don't think we can
So-
continue that way.
Right, no.
I think
And
we have to, you know,
We've been called on it
yeah,
by
okay.
All right.
other
Thanks.
people.
Thanks.
And it's frustrating because the idea was to have most of this go on during Modernism Week, and it was barely able to be done because it got such a late start. But it was, at first it was gonna say, Imagine Art Here, which we've been using, and then when the mural was done, it was going to say Art is Here, just in small, you know.
I'm sorry, Chair Shriver, I really doesn't matter the logistics of it, it's just that I was really troubled, the fact that we had never even talked about that,
right.
anything on that wall.
Okay, well,
So-
if I can interject right now, being that we have two issues going on right now, can we stick to the
Yeah.
agenda and this discussion with the artists who are here, and then in our special meeting, if you would add that to the calendar, then we can discuss how to address the hashtag and what to do about it.
Okay,
Yeah, because right now I just wanted to give because it's just an overview discussion of the plan for the site with the image of the site up on the screen. And both Aaron and Pete were nice enough to come to answer any specific questions that fellow commissioners might have regarding the project. So if we can,
now,
Is
again,
that,
the
is-
walls,
are you making a motion? Is that a motion?
no, this is purely
okay.
discussion. Purely discussion, but I wanted Pete and Aaron to be here to answer very specific questions that you all have.
can you show on that picture where the walls would go? And if you were on Museum Way, I know, but it's
Yeah.
sort of hard to, but if you're walking
Right.
down Museum Way towards the museum.
So that would be facing Bellardo.
These two, if I
Yeah.
have a translation,
Mhm.
these two are the west facing, so
Right.
they face
Bellardo.
Museum Drive.
Right.
Bellardo.
And Bellardo,
Right.
yes. Yeah, face Bellardo. And then behind this wooden structure is a longer one with a U cutout, which faces north. There's two facing south and two facing north. So two are facing Museum Way and two face whatever the next
That
street
is.
is.
But
The new
are
street,
they,
yeah, Hyatt.
are
Yeah,
they
toward the Hyatt's, right.
on the north side of the piece of property? In other words, if you're walking on Museum Way, is the site open until you get to until you see the walls? They're not blocking the access to the site or the view of it from
No, they're
Museum
all-
Way or Bellardo?
No, they're all within the property itself. So if you're walking along Museum Way from Bellardo to Palm Canyon,
And it's on your left.
then you look to the left. And as Aaron has indicated on one of the images, that you would see, if you're on that street, you would look to the left and you would see the ones that are facing south. But also from the drawing, if you have the west facing wrapping around, so you would also see the side of the ones that you wouldn't actually see the front of.
But where are they on the property?
Closer to Blaze Pizza than they are to Museum Way. Is that what
Well,
you're
there's
asking?
two. One is close to the Blaze side, so the south part of the property, and then one is a little bit further north and slightly further west.
If
Yes,
you're
sir.
walking on Museum Way,
If you go to the Pokey Place.
right, across from the big poke place,
Right.
do you see
And then
90% of the site and the murals are on the far side from the House of Poke, which we like
Yes,
a lot?
they're on
Right,
the
it's like
far
the-
side from, yes.
They are.
Yeah.
Because-
Yeah, the one long would really face House of Pokey, and the other one is just slightly further.
But it would be it would be
Well
on
into the
far
site.
side.
Oh,
would be-
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
it would
Okay.
be-
Easily
Because-
20, 30 feet in.
Okay, because one of the things that Michael Braun wants to do is quote-unquote activate the site by having people be able to, he's putting gravel down.
Right.
And he wants possibly pop-up, things going on. So the murals can't block access to the site, they have to be the frame around it.
Right.
And so,
Well, the
It
murals
sounds
are the
like
frame
that's-
within the site.
yeah.
but are they on the northmost part of the site? You know what we need is a plot plan of where these walls are, that's all. But I think you're gonna need to show it to Michael Braun as well. In other words, right now, see the fence there that's in the back? Is that where the murals are?
No.
Click in the middle.
So,
Okay.
in the background, that's where Blaze is.
Right.
So it's closer to Blaze than it is to Pokey.
Okay.
So I think
Yeah.
what you're
But the second-
asking
the second one-
is, I think it works,
The
what you're,
second one
what
is
you're
where?
saying.
It's behind this container, which is closer to the House of Pokey.
Oh, it
side.
is, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So there's two of these on the site. This one is the one that's showing, which is
Right.
north.
But then from here to Museum Way, there's still quite a distance, right?
Well, there's a second one of those.
No. this
But I mean,
one
from
here.
this point in the site towards Museum Way, there's still
All the
distance
photos
if he
are
wants to
in
do
the
these
papers.
activations, right?
Well, yes, around each of these two existing
Don't get involved.
faux concrete structures, there is ample space from where it ends to the edge of the property line.
Okay.
It's
As
at
long
least-
as you can walk onto the property, you know, just about the whole length of the street.
Oh, yeah, because from the existing sidewalk to the edge of the one that's closest to the House of Pokey has got to be at least 40 feet.
But I think it would be helpful to also have a plot plan, just where they are.
Well, yeah, if we can get the architectural drawings from Braun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they exist, so they're
Right.
on the
Is
site.
anything going to be done to those funny little round?
Yes.
things? Yes, okay.
And that's to be determined once we do the artist selection and fine tune sort of our artist selection, what we want to have happen to them. Because there are just basically faux concrete pedestals. So the easiest thing would be just to have artists who are doing the murals facing them do those, or sort of up to us how we just paint them all black. I don't know.
Faux concrete?
Yeah, just
These are
slurry.
wires and things that
Yeah.
are
Okay.
there for future development, and
There
they
is-
they were required to just encase
Yeah,
them
the
in
covered
this.
rebar was just a faux,
Okay.
or a wood structure and slurry.
Okay.
So they're all over the place, I mean, they're just,
There's approximately 20 of them.
Are they movable?
No,
there's wires that come out of the
it's
ground.
rebar.
Just to,
And so they just
Set
have
up
to put this
a-
around.
okay.
But they are a sort of fun surface to do something with. There's a lot of them.
What, I'd like to hear from the artists, you know,
Yeah.
what's the story? What story will they tell? What, the soul, what's,
Well,
I
I
hear
mean,
the
that-
bones and the flesh, what's the
the-
soul of it?
That's essentially up to the artist that are actually gonna be painting, because different artists do different types of, things. As you can see, I've seen a few examples, so it really just comes down to that. We've submitted about 10 artists, so after you guys select who you want, if you guys wanna be the ones that select, then we'll kinda come up with something and have a broader idea of what theme or what everything will consist of. Right now, it's just a matter of picking those artists and then moving forward from there. So we're
I
not
have a
really
que-
sure yet, as far as what we're doing, because we don't know what artists you guys wanna go with.
But just to, further to Commissioner Murray's question, I would like as the commission to have this be a very strong graffiti street art vision. So
What was
that's
the last part? Street art?
Vision.
Vision, excuse me.
Yeah, so representation of these which Pete has provided for us. It's a graffiti art park.
Russell, how do you propose to pick the artists? And with-
Through, as Pete just said, he would come to us with a selection of perhaps 10 or 12 artists, and we would fine tune it down to the 6 that we would select based on their drawings, that, just as we did with Ryan.
Based on past work,
Yeah.
basically.
so are they, where are the artists from?
Some are from the Coachella Valley, and some are from other areas like San Diego and Los Angeles.
So how do you find the artists?
These are artists that I work with already through other projects. Basically, I personally know them for the most part.
Yeah, and Pete is the owner of Flat Black Paint Supply in Palm Desert, so he's extremely well connected with the artists like Aaron Hansen.
Yeah, we've done projects like this in the past where we pretty much bring in all the artists, and not sure if you guys are familiar with the Westfield Shopping Center's street event every year, but we pretty much brought all the artists in there, and through that is where I've met a lot of artists, basically.
You had cars
I-
there this year or something like that? That was a pretty big event, wasn't it?
For the last couple of years,
Yeah.
a few years, yes.
Do you think something like that would happen here?
It's a pretty small of an area, but I
Uh-huh.
think essentially we could bring in something similar. The top parking structure where I'm referring to at the Westfield Mall is a pretty big area,
Yeah,
so
I heard
you
about
fit a
that.
lot more, yeah.
I
One last
think
question.
yeah.
Would the artists be open to the newspaper spotlighting them or anything?
Yeah,
like that?
absolutely. I mean, any kind of coverage would be great for them.
Sounds
I,
exciting.
Yeah.
I think, though, that before we it comes to the whole commission, we need a small group, one of our subcommittees or an ad hoc committee, and I'm thinking Commissioner Murray, Commissioner Pritchard, who's doing it anyway, and Commissioner Gladstone, if you have the time to do it. So that I think that this choice of artists and the theme has to be worked out with a little bit smaller group than, at a meeting where we're gonna vote on it. So just come with the
If
whole
I can
plan.
make just like a statement about
Yes.
this is very exciting. It's very exciting because it offers a possibility for diversity and inclusion that I think this commission has, by no individual's fault, but just the nature of how we have to work. It's been very limited and self-selecting. So I would hope that in this process of selecting artists, that you may expand out a little bit in thinking about who you'd be willing to work with, particularly if there are ties to the community. In particular, I'd just like to reference a proposal that I sent along a few meetings ago with like a Filipino arts collective that's based in Demuth Park, and they're fine artists who work graphically and maybe haven't done so many large-scale projects, but totally have the skill set too. So I hope you would be open to, in this process, have us, we all have our hands in the creative community here, and we certainly value your many connections. You know a lot more about street art than we do, but I do think this is a very good opportunity for us to really showcase what the community here has to offer, as well as put in context with the street art in Southern California more broadly. I like this idea of there being a sort of local focus, but also sort of expanding out. I mean, I think this is how we have to strengthen what's great about this region, So I would welcome the opportunity to contribute to that conversation. But I do think it's very important that it not be limited to, it's easiest to work with people we know, but it's also would be fun and challenging and be something I think we would all welcome to expand out who we know, make more friends.
Do you see it as something, since it is on a temporary site, that could be, like next year, just painted over in another group of artists?
Every year.
Absolutely. But we do that now already.
I'm serious. But all I'm saying is that if at the next meeting we're going to vote on going forward on this project and funding it, I think that there should be another, a small group that meets with the artists and comes to the meeting and says, this is what we want to do, not pick an artist. We can't do that kind of thing in a meeting like this. So what we need is a recommendation already for this is who would do it, and this is when it would be done, and this is what it would cost, and then we can vote to go forward. So,
How soon can you start?
yeah.
Ask
As soon
Michael
as the walls are
Braun.
done.
As soon as you get the
That's
check,
right.
is that what
It
you?
would be great to-
Well, the walls, yeah, definitely.
So
The wall.
the California Arts Commission has determined that April is Arts, Creativity, and Culture Month. And I think that if this was going on during the month of April, and if it coincided somewhat with this other activation downtown, that would be great. That's mid-April. So if we have it all ready to go and can vote on it in 2 weeks,
That's just not gonna happen.
What were you thinking, Russell? How soon, what were you thinking? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was thinking that the special meeting on the 28th, that we would vote on the contract, that the city would write the contract, and Pete and Aaron would get to work in the beginning of April
And lastly, how did you come up with that amount?
through the guidance of Pete
It's broken down for you.
Okay.
on the back page of the pamphlet.
Right, okay.
So I have a few questions. Sorry, I'm like the fun one on the committee. Particularly as access, I'm still confused about public access, safety and liability. If it's not our property, it's private property. If they are hired to build walls and then a wall falls on someone, who's liable?
First of all,
So
we
I
do
think there are a
have
lot
a-
of those questions that I'd love to just,
Right.
we don't need
but
to
we
hear.
have an easement from Grid Development
But
to
I-
do
but I-
this.
I
But
know.
that's why I would prefer to have them build the walls.
Yeah, but even if we have that easement, I just feel pretty uncomfortable. I mean, I don't understand how people are gonna be able to safely walk around there, so anyway, I know it's fine, it'll be fine, they'll figure it out, but it just questions. And then, the other thing is just the project management, these details. I just think it needs to be a little more specific in terms of hours and the project plan for, phase one, meeting with Russell, getting contract signed, and then sort of like the selection process, and really seeing a fuller schedule of how that would work would be really
And
helpful.
I think what we're learning,
Yeah.
the city is not really used to doing contracts with artists, but they appreciate it being broken into sort of
Just
tasks
agree.
and hours. or
And in
whatever.
addition, just also incorporating our mural approval process will be put to the test. So I think, there are usually fees that are put in there, but you could put those in and then we can discuss waiving them since it's
If we're doing it.
if we're doing it, we don't have to
need
worry about this?
We don't have
Okay.
to worry about it, but we
Okay.
do have to worry about liability and
Yeah, so
access and
just,
things.
so liability and access, if it's possible to not have, to have the artist focus on the art and not
Right,
really have to
exactly.
worry about, constructing walls, I would be much more comfortable with this project.
And I've asked Michael Braun to consider that because he is required by the city to clean up this site by March 31st. And he has told the city that as part of his cleanup, there will be art, that he's working with us for these murals or street art or whatever you call it. But as far as what it's painted on, I think that's part of his site, and we should try to get him to do that.
But the picture on the screen now is actually a photo taken this afternoon. So if anybody had been past that site a week ago, it's remarkably cleaned up. So if you picture this with a layer of gravel, it's essentially going to look like the art park version where what's the artist's name of the mural across the museum? Sophia mural is. So.
And there's also an opportunity, I think, to work with, I don't know if those rounded things will also be utilized. Those would be, okay, cool.
I think will be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I had the same question. So the idea is that it is like a flat, open space that visitors can like walk
Yeah.
around the murals and
Except
everything.
for those little,
Doodads, right, okay. Yeah, but I mean, that's the vision, right? Because it has been closed off, right? I mean, it's been
the
fenced
fence
off.
is
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
down.
Yeah, so that was my, so that will be gone. It will be people can walk up to them and
Yep.
Yeah.
I
touch
should
them if
also
they want.
mention, there's just, ADA compliance. It looks like there's a lot of space for wheelchairs, but that is also something that we do have to be aware of.
Right.
We don't
Well,
want
yeah,
a
but-
lawsuit.
Yeah, but what about the site where Sophia's mural is? How ADA compliant is that?
Like you can see it, and there are ramps on it. I just don't know about all this stuff, I
Right,
don't
there's
know.
like steps
Or if
down
there's a
and
step
stuff,
to go
right,
into
right,
it or
yeah.
something like that.
So,
I'm just saying that there are, there have been a lot of people, lawsuits, to a lot of public and cultural institutions lately about this issue, so just something
You
to
know
just
that-
Right.
keep in mind as they're assessing access and.
Someone climbed to the baby that's affixed to the side of the thing.
Really?
To take a picture, fell off and tried to sue Grit Development for, negligence or whatever. She had to climb over a wall to get on this
Right.
baby, but.
Okay, well, to that point, sorry. I
Let me just
wanna
say real quick, so
yeah.
30,000, I think, not to exceed 30,000 to allow for other things.
You
Yeah.
know, 25 is a number that can
Magic.
be voted by us and approved by the
Okay,
city
that's
manager.
right, that's right.
Anything more than that has to go to the city council.
That's true.
And that just adds several,
Right.
Right.
weeks or whatever to the timeline, so.
But as another component to this site and our activating it, I wanted us to consider, which we could address the ADA compliance part, and the reason why Ryan Campbell is here is because he does these amazing structures that would be created and serve as the actual entrance to the art park, and that could be specifically managed so that that would be the point of entry for any ADA needs. And Jay, if you have one of the images of that you can pull up on the screen.
Right. Yeah.
the sort of temple-like structure, and if you have questions specific to how it's made.
The- I-
Yeah. And this is certainly something when we meet as an ad hoc committee before the March 28th meeting, we can determine if this is a direction that we want to go, because this would be in addition to the budget for the graffiti art park. This would be a separate art installation.
What about lighting?
I'm working on that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think this could be as a conversation in terms of thinking about wayfinding, because I can see how that could be actually useful, but it seems like it would be hard to plan that into this first
Right.
round, because we just don't really know what the site is gonna be like until
Right.
the site
And-
is actually done.
and
So
they're
I would
having-
recommend focusing on the, let's think about this separately.
They are having, it's taking more, it's harder than they thought to level this off. There were some dips, and then there was some water, and then there was, so, I know that they're trying to make it a level site, but I think if we want to proceed with this, we have to just not do things that require, you can see these murals without taking
Right.
like your wheelchair through the gravel. If we start to close it in more, then we'll have other issues, so it will be visible, which is fine.
I'm
Like
sorry, I
Sophia's,
have to
you
depart,
can see it.
get my kids. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
So April would work, that timeframe?
Yes, it would.
It's
It
never
would
gonna
actually be
happen.
preferable.
I would just
It's already
step back a
mid-March.
little bit
What?
and
What?
not rush this, because I think the end product will be, it doesn't seem like it's gonna happen on that timeframe.
I just can't
From our
imagine.
experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
It
think
would
it
be
can be really, the more the site, the better the site is and the better the thought is, I think the better it will be, so. I don't know, I mean, it seems unrealistic to think to have it, to be able to approve this in 2 weeks.
I think that the basic idea, though, is temporary street art.
No, I'm not,
I'm just saying, if Grid Development will build the wall.
but we've
we
been
can
waiting
paint
for
it.
them for all these months, I'm just saying, it just seems this timeline seems unrealistic. So,
Well, either in 2 weeks, we'll have something that we can vote on, or we won't, but I think,
We can vote on an idea, a concept, but I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen in April. I mean, it's just highly unlikely,
stranger things
given.
have happened.
Really? Well,
When
But
is
yeah,
it-
but
when is
it's
the-
a
when is
mysterious
the pop-up?
sign, right?
When is the pop-up, April
But
6th?
yeah, but
April
if-
16th.
Yeah, but if we take that approach to it, then we mire ourselves down if we can
Even
make it happen.
even if it's just getting started, it would be nice to have, I mean, it was wonderful having Ryan painting, poor guy,
During
in
modernism,
the pit.
right, during modernism.
In the rain, but lots and lots of people came and talked to him, and,
Yeah, we got a
So-
great response.
and I think whatever stage of this we're at, if there's something going on that site, it will be,
But yeah,
well, I'm
it's-
just saying I don't think it's realistic to have funds to people in it by this time.
that's,
I think
I
we
know.
need to think about that, honestly, we're volunteers and we can't spend like 20 hours a week trying to get people paid in the city. And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the city, but, artists have to be, people have to be paid and have POs and be paid in a timely fashion. And, they can't be doing work on their dime and being paid down the road. So I feel really strongly about that. I think this could be a great project, but I just think we should be a little more realistic. We
duly
can't,
noted.
I agree.
Okay, yeah. We're trying, but, we're already pushing the envelope in a lot of ways. So I would like to suggest that, since we're quickly losing our quorum, that I'd like a motion to adjourn to the special meeting, and I would like to request that anyone who can stay, come out and walk on the median and see if we can figure out where the
So,
sculpture should
okay, so action item D,
It's
is sort of postponed for future discussion.
a little site visit for.
Yeah, I just had a commissioner comment. I just wanted to
Yes.
reiterate my enthusiasm for the process that we've been going through with Dyson and Womack. And I think it's been really helpful to have those conversations, and I look forward to more. And just also, I think this is a great project, the graffiti project, but I do agree with Tracy that I think it's, just given our past experience, we should be more realistic about when we think it might get done, which doesn't mean that we don't support the project. It just means that we want to be realistic about how soon these things are done by the city, because we're always at their mercy, so. But anyway, I think it's terrific, and thank you for all your hard work on it.
And
Can
April
I just say
6th,
one thing? I'm sorry.
Yes.
We're not in a big hurry. You guys take your time. It's totally fine with us.
It's not us, it's the
Or-
city. So-
yeah, well,
I mean,
it's really not, we're not pushing it, right. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
What,
Thank you.
what has evolved as the process is we try to have a time when we'd like to do these things, and we've learned to just, take a deep breath, because but if we don't plan to try to do it in April, then it will be June. I mean, we have to just go ahead with, and, if something holds it up, like, the last bill someone submitted looked like they were gonna pay Jay, right? It's just a, misunderstanding about the, but, he sends it in and it comes bouncing back, like, do you really mean that they're supposed to pay me? So we'll just keep trying to get these projects going. And, and so far, we have 3 out of our 4 original big projects we wanted to do, and this is one more. And I think at the beginning of the year, we didn't think we could do any of them, so.
Yeah.
All right, how about a motion to adjourn?
April 6th is the unveiling at St. Paul's.
Oh, when?
Oh,
April 6th.
oh,
What
good.
time?
I don't have that in front of me. I can,
Oh, please,
Get
we
that
have
out.
to.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
please tell Madalena, and
yes,
let's get that.
yes, yes.
yes.
And I'd like to meet with you again, Mr. Yanni. We took a tour of the North End
Yeah,
and talked about public art on that median in that area.
Definitely.
Would like to get that ball rolling.
excellent.
And lastly, Russell, when were you hoping the graffiti what month were you thinking? What were your expectations?
Middle of April.
Middle of April, okay. Thank you.
And I have just one quick question before we adjourn. On the Clement sculptures, which one is Butch, which one is Squeeze, and which one is the other one?
Beats me. Let's call them yellow, red, and orange.
In that order?
I have no idea.
No, we don't know. We're not sure.
We're not on a first name basis.
So, report of staff, anything?
No, nothing to report. You've thoroughly
Only that they
had
never
my mind
told him
racing,
that-
though.
I don't think they told him this was part of his job.
Jay, will you meet with Dyson? And is there any way, have you met, should that be part of that?
I don't know if that would help much,
think it
given
would.
my art background.
But economic development,
Yeah.
Economic development,
And,
we can talk all day
and how
long.
the city works.
Okay.
right.
It's just
I'm
part of
happy
it,
to if they
yeah.
need to.
Okay, ready to adjourn? I make a motion to adjourn this Public Arts Commission to our next special meeting at 4 p.m. Thursday, March 28th, 2019, to be held at the Boys and Girls Club of Palm Springs at 450 South Sunrise Way, Palm Springs, California.
Second.
Okay, this
What time
meeting
did
is
you say?
adjourned.